Hello everyone, my name is Mirna and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where daily thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, Angel Rebo, CEO consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation is going to be interviewing Rodolfo Carrillo. Rodolfo has a very interesting and unique combinations of business skills, experience, and spiritual wisdom that triggers profound transformation through his work. Before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us. Subscribing to our channel if you haven't done it yet, leaving us a positive comment down this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that is going to benefit of the content that we're sharing here today. We also want you to know that while we are live streaming, like right now, we have the active chat, the screen that you're going to be seeing here on my side, and through there, you can interact with us. You can enter your questions. We just please ask you to follow the format, word question in caps, and the actual question you have. Last but not least, Mindalia is broadcasting from Monday through Friday in Portuguese through Mindalia Televisão, English through Mindalia TV English, as you already know, and in Spanish in Mindalia Televisión. We want you to visit our different pages, find out what we are developing there daily. It's information as beautiful and as interesting as the one that you see daily on Mindalia TV. We also want you to collaborate with us with your own valuable content. And for that, you can go to our website. You will go to the link that we have in the top of the page. It says collaborate with Mindalia. It's going to take you to a form that you can fill out for our technical team to be getting in contact with you later. I'm not going to delay this any further, and I'm going to leave you with Rodolfo and with Angel. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mirna, for your introduction, and welcome Rodolfo to Mindalia TV.
Thank you, Angel, and thank you, Mirna. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. So, the first thing I would like to do today, actually, my voice is not as strong as it usually is, so I will have to apologize with everybody, but I'll do my best to be able to catch up with Rodolfo and all his answers. So, thank you very much for being with us today. Let's start talking about how Rodolfo changes the world every day. Rodolfo, how do you do it?
Well, that's quite a statement. I would say that, and this is what I share with the world and with my clients. I say that I look to change the world first on working on myself, and that's what I share. What I do on the outside is I do development for conscious leadership and conscious business. For conscious organizations. And that means conscious leadership is bringing the attention, learning how to bring the attention inside, recognizing what's going on within us, and from there, what it is that we're bringing to the outside, and how is it that we're influencing the outside from what's going on inside ourselves. So I share a model with with people who want to learn about what to look on the inside, how to look inside, what to look for inside us, and how to transform that so we can bring that out. And then once we learn how to deal with ourselves, then it's easier to learn how to deal with others and influence others in a positive way.
So, it sounds like very logical that people should look inside before doing anything else, but why would you say people don't do that systematically?
I think that we're basically not trained to do that. Since we're small, we're trained to look outside and to see what's going on the outside. So we're telling our kids, pay attention to this, pay attention to the other thing, concentrate on what you're doing on the outside, listen to me, like listen to the other person, listen to us as parents. But we don't tell them to, we never teach them to stop and say, okay, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What's going on within you? Just learn to stop and see inside. And we just don't do that, at least in the Western world.
Is it as important the way that we are feeling as the way that we are thinking?
The way I see it, our emotions are triggered by either two things, either a physical aspect, and then let's say we're hungry, and then our body starts reacting to that hunger and starts creating a sense of uneasiness at the beginning, just so we pay attention to it. and then it starts growing because it starts demanding attention because we need to eat, because if not, we're gonna die. So emotions can be triggered from the body. It's like something's not going right, and our body starts reacting and telling us, pay attention to this. So we need to attend to that. But emotions can also be triggered by our thoughts, and for most of us, our emotions are triggered by our thoughts, because basically our basic needs right now in our lives are most of us have them met. So our thoughts are the ones that usually trigger our emotions. So is one more important than the other? I don't think one's more important than the other. I think when emotions show up, you need to pay attention to what's going on. And what's going on is either on a physical aspect, and it's like, am I taking care of myself, my body? Or what am I thinking? What's going on in my mind that's triggering these emotions? So when we learn to pay attention to our thoughts, we can actually catch them before they trigger our emotions, or at the moment they are triggering our emotions. We can change them. If while we learn to do that, to just catch our own thoughts when they're leading us in a way we don't want to go, then our emotions are this flag that is raised, and it tells us, hey, watch out and look for something, because we're not feeling right, or we're feeling right, and we want to continue doing what we're doing because it's feeling good.
Okay, so you mentioned before that there's like different steps that you help people to follow. What's the final destination of those steps if they follow them?
Yeah, basically what we're looking for is developing a state of well-being. That's the ideal, right? And everyone in the world is looking to be happy, or is looking to have a state of well-being. And there's no one in the world that wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I've had a very good life, and I want to screw it up, right? I want to feel bad for a day, right? No one goes through that. So basically what we want to do is we want to learn to look inside and see what is triggering either our feelings of well-being or our feelings of uneasiness, or being upset or angry, or whatever takes us away from that state of well-being, and learn to work with that. So at the end of going through through the learning of the tools and the paying attention to the aspects, I share a model with people, which is a 7-aspect model and a 5 principle. And once you learn how to work with them, then you can regulate yourself, because we're dynamic beings. Everything's moving within us all the time, and we're very complex. Different things are happening at the same time, and one little thing that we think that is not going to have a great impact then triggers another and another and another, and then we're in a crisis, right? Either a physical crisis or emotional crisis or mental crisis. And we're complex, and that's good, because complex beings have a great ability to adapt. So we don't want to stop being complex. We want to learn how to deal with that complexity. So once you understand what's going on within you and you have the tools to work with it, then you have a greater adaptability. And that greater adaptability allows us to come to that state of well-being in a, I don't want to use the word simpler way, but maybe in a shorter time span.
Okay, so what are the different steps and what are the different principles?
Okay, so basically what I share is, like I said, a 7-aspect model. So that's basically what we want to pay attention to. So there's a physical aspect to ourselves, and that physical aspect means what's going on with our body and our habits. And we need to take care of our body and our habits, because those are gonna, like I said before, those are gonna trigger emotions, and those are gonna be directly related to our well-being, or to our emotions, right? So our physical aspect's the first one. So we need to learn to pay attention to it and attend to the way we eat, or what we eat, how we exercise, or if we exercise, and we should exercise, because we've been, like, our bodies are built to run, to jump, to climb trees. That's 200 million years of evolution. And now we spend most of our days sitting down. And our bodies haven't adapted to that. Sitting down for 8 hours a day is just a fairly recent attribute in our lives that's less than 100 years old, like 50 years old. Before that, we were running, we were working on the fields, we were hunting. So we need to take care of our bodies, eat right, sleep right, exercise, and watch our, like I said, our habits. What is it that we're doing? So that's the physical aspect. Then there's our emotions, and we need to be able to recognize our emotions. Most people don't even know what they feel, don't even know how to recognize what they're feeling because they don't stop and pay attention. It's like anger. Most people don't know where it manifests, and it has two basic points where it manifests. It manifests here in our forehead, and we put a lot of our energy moves in our forehead when there's anger, and the other is our stomach because it creates a lot of force. We need force in order to address that situation that creates the anger, but we don't pay attention to that. So we need to be able to recognize our emotions and have tools to deal with that. Not suppress them, but deal with them, because that's very important. And what we suppress is like once our emotions are just a reaction to, it's a biochemical reaction to either a physical or a mental aspect. So we can't just limit that biophysical reaction. Once the hormones are in our body and our body is reacting, we need to allow that process to go or to flow. Right? So we need tools to deal with our emotions. The third aspect is our belief system. And since we're born, we're being taught how the world is, right? And we're being taught to interpret the world. So a kid's growing up and we tell them, this is good, this is bad, do this, don't do this. And we learn how the world is, right? And we learn to interpret that. So if someone yells, then that might be bad for us because our dad yells and our dad yells to us and we feel not loved. So yelling is bad, right? But if you grow up in an Italian family, raising your voice and yelling is not bad. It's not associated with not being loved. It's just the way they are, right? And it's a culture thing. Some cultures are very direct and they tell you the things, how they see them. It's like, I don't like this, I want this, I don't want this. That's very much like German cultures or the German culture is like very direct. And if a German person, the usual German person will tell you directly, it's like, I don't like this. Yeah, it's fine for them. In Costa Rica, when someone is that direct, that is seen as for most people, that's disrespectful. Like you go around things, right? And you tell it's like, well, it could be better. I'm not. So we run around a lot of stuff because being very direct is disrespectful. The idea with the belief systems, we need to be able to recognize our belief system and see how it's either helping us integrate and have a good relationship with others and with ourselves, or if it's limiting us. And when it's limiting us, then we can change that belief system because it's all we're able to reprogram that belief system in our subconscious mind. The next aspect is the intellect. And the intellect is our ability to recognize, analyze, and make decisions. And every time we make a decision, we create a gap in ourselves. It's like I sense that my mouth is dry, and this dry mouth, I analyze and say, oh, I'm thirsty. And the moment I analyze and recognize I'm thirsty, then I make a decision. I want water. When I decide that I want water, I create this gap between where I am right now and what I want. And now that creates the energy. Now I'm gonna go look for water. And as long as we're looking for water and we are seeking to eliminate that gap, there's motivation and we feel good. It's like we know that we're gonna arrive at that point where that need is gonna be satisfied. But if I don't have water, if I'm in the middle of the desert and I know there's no water nearby and I don't feel like that gap is being reduced, then it starts creating suffering. And a story comes after that, right? Or with that, it's like, oh, I'm gonna die. I can't bear this anymore, and it creates suffering. So basically, we want to be able to recognize our gaps. I want a new car. I don't like my job. I want a new job, and all this stories that we tell ourselves that create gaps, and see if we're bridging them, and if we are, then we're usually feeling good. We have patience, we have motivation. But when we are not, then we feel bad. And so we need to change either the goal and the decision that we made, or we need to start acting upon that, right? And that will create the energy for that. So with that, the next aspect is what I was just saying is the mind. And the nature of the mind is to think. And we can't just stop thinking. Like, we can calm the mind down, but the nature of the mind is to think. So, and thought has two qualities. One is time, so it can go to the past, it can go to the future, or it can be in the present moment. And the other one would be the quality of the thought. It could be either expansive or constrictive. So we can think about the past and think about what a very hard week we've had in the past. And the last week was very hard. We're like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want this anymore. I hate my life. Or we can see the past and we can see that hard working week that we've had, or tough week that we've had, and then just see it as, I've grown, I was able to go through it, well, it's over. So we can change the quality of our thought. So we want to pay attention to what we're telling ourselves. And if we're stuck in the past or stuck in the future, when we're stuck in the future, we have anxiety. We're always anticipating all the time. We're not enjoying what's going on right now. So we want to recognize where our mind is, be able to use the past as a reference, use the future for planning, but come back to the present moment and enjoy that's there, and the quality of our thought. So when it's not serving us, we can change it. And then the sixth aspect is the ego, and that is the way we recognize ourselves. And since we start growing, we start recognizing ourselves in the other. So the ego, basically what it does, it compares us all the time. It leads us to comparing us all the time. So I am tall because there are short people. I am fat because there are skinnier people. I am white because there are darker people. I am good because there are people that are not so good. I am intelligent because there are people that can't solve the problems as quickly or as good as I can, or the other way around. And we're always doing this because this is the way we learn. Like when we're kids, we learn to walk by seeing the other one. No one, it's not a rational process. We don't sit as a kid and say, hey, that's a better way. Like, I see that person walking in 2 legs, and that's a better way of moving than 4 legs. I'm going to try that. It's not a rational process. We see the other and we start imitating. That's how we learn. So comparing ourselves is absolutely necessary for us to be able to recognize ourselves. But what that comparison can either lead us to connect. So I don't know, and you know, so I want to learn from you. So I'm gonna ask you questions. I'm gonna connect with you. Or I don't know, and you know, and I don't want you to see that I don't know. So I'm gonna keep quiet, and I'm gonna not ask questions. I'm not gonna expose myself because I don't want you to know that I don't know, right? And that will separate us. And that's going on all the time in our minds. So we want to recognize that comparison and start using those differences to build something better. And that's bringing inclusiveness into work, into our lives, and into society. It's like learning that everyone is different, and the way that we are different can allow us to build better environments for everyone. So that's the ego. And then the 7th aspect is the observer. It's from where we look at all of this, right? We're not the mind, we're not the ego, we're not our belief system, we're not the body, we're not our emotions, we're not the intellect. We are the ones that can actually recognize all this. And we need to be able to recognize ourselves as that is separate, so we can deal with them, right? So we train this. And that's basically through mindful meditation. That's, at least for me, that's the best way to train on how to detach myself or put distance between all of this that's going on and who I really am, right? Which is the observer. So I'm able to recognize all this. And from that observer is where I add the 5 principles that I was talking about before. Like, you need to have a structure from where you make decisions, right? And that's going to lead the decisions that you make around these aspects and how you want to deal with them. And the 5 principles that I propose are, first a sense of purpose. And it's like, why are you doing what you're doing? And a sense of purpose, a purpose should not be the difference between living from a purpose and living from ego. Is ego would be I want for me, and the purpose is expansive. It's like I want, but for everyone, or for more people, or for a community, or my work, or my family. It's expansive. So that actually allows us to take our ego and put it in its place. It's a part of who we are, and it's important that we take care of it. But it's not at the center of our lives. So that's purpose. That purpose needs to be accompanied by the second principle, which is responsibility. So we need to stop playing victims. It's like, oh yeah, I get angry and I'm dealing with my anger because you, or because the other, because my partner, because my boss. It's like, we need to take responsibility for our emotions, our thoughts, our belief systems. It's like, okay, society programmed this in me. Yes, that's right. But I can change it. I can change my programming. So we need to be responsible for our lives and living our purpose. So that's responsibility. And that's going from victim standpoint to a warrior standpoint, or an empowered position. It's like, I'm taking charge of myself. The next aspect is a beginner's mind. And this is very important, because when you take responsibility, or when we take responsibility, sometimes we want to bring out the whip. And then it's like, oh, I messed up. Oh, I'm not doing this right. And we start hitting ourselves and we start judging ourselves. We don't want to judge ourselves, because that's hard on us. We're not creating well-being when we're judging and hitting ourselves because we didn't know how to do it better. So we want to bring a beginner's mind attitude, which is, I want to learn. It's like, okay, it didn't work out. That's fine. How am I going to do it different next time? And as long as we are in that beginner's mindset, we're always learning, we're always improving, we're always changing, we're adapting. And adaptation leads to the ability of being well, or well-being. Right? So a beginner's mindset is also going to allow us to connect, which is the fourth principle, the interdependence, the recognition that we're all together. And we didn't come to this world on our own. And if it wasn't for other people, we wouldn't have survived a couple of days in this world. Because we are the most defenseless cub in nature. It's like we wouldn't survive 24 hours without our parents or someone taking care of us. And so we are interdependent, and we create societies based on that interdependence. And we need to recognize that. So our beginner's mind basically allows us to connect to that system, say, okay, I don't have to know it all. And I can always learn from others. And that way we connect to each other. And that's the recognition of interdependence. And once we actively recognize that we can't just go into a mountain and live on our own, or we can, but that's not the way societies are built, and that we live in a society that's interdependent, then that takes us to the fifth principle, which is not only more than our purpose, is how are we creating value in that system? And that's what I call compassion. How am I seeking to make that system better and to help others either suffer less or have a beautiful and rich life? And that's from those principles, purpose, responsibility, beginner's mind, the recognition of interdependence, and creating value, then I address my belief system, I address my emotions, I address my thoughts, my ego, my body, my intellect. And once we learn to live our lives this way, and that's the way I live my life, because this has been a personal journey first, and then it's become a sharing process. Once we live our lives from this perspective, then it becomes easier. Because when something shows up, it's like, okay, I can whip myself and judge myself, or I can learn. I want to learn, but I want to learn based on the purpose that I have. And from the people around me. And I'll take responsibility for this, and I'll change my beliefs, I'll change my habits, I'll change the story I'm telling myself, I'll change the way I see myself in regards to others, and I'll grow. And hopefully become a better human. And when I say a better human, it's like a person who's in a state of well-being, and then I can share better with others and I can interact better with others.
What was your personal journey that took you to learn, understand, and teach what you just explained to us, Rodolfo?
Yeah, well, that's quite a story. I started meditating when I was 7 years old, and I was basically because my mom had been studying Oriental philosophies and mysticism for all her life. And I came home from school one day and my foot was hurting. My left foot was hurting. She's like, "Oh, let's put some ice on it." And I couldn't sleep. By the end of the day, I couldn't sleep. So she said, "We're going to do a relaxation." And she led me into this meditation so I could sleep all night. Next morning, my foot was like 3 times its normal size, and I couldn't put it on the ground, and it hurt very much. So I was taken to the doctor. And the doctor said, well, he took some x-rays, and he said, well, foot's broken, like the pinky finger is broken. And he asked, when did this happen? And my mom says, well, he's been complaining about pain since he came from school yesterday. And the doctor says, well, that's impossible because this hurts too much. And there's no way a kid can spend the night with a broken toe or, a broken finger because it just hurts too much. And then my mom's like, well, I don't know how you did it, but now we got to fix it, right? So basically, my mom understood the power of the meditation that she led me through, and she started doing it more often with me, and I liked it. So I started learning from her. And through all these years, since I was 7 till now, I kept on studying and seeking and working on myself until I got to recognize all these aspects and principles that come up, that were showing up in me. And then people started asking me to share it because it was a way of life for me. So it was just my life. And I wasn't sharing it much because when I was a kid, I was told that I wasn't meant to share it with others because I could be judged by others. Because Costa Rica was a very Catholic country, and Oriental philosophies and meditation was frowned upon. So so it wasn't until about 12 years ago that I actually started opening up. And because the culture has changed a lot, and now Costa Rica is a yoga and spiritual retreat center, like the whole country is a retreat center for people from all over the world, right? So right now it's very open to that. So I started sharing it, and that's how I came to it through a deep personal process that has been going on for my whole life.
Wow. And how did you start sharing this, not only with people around you, but also with companies? Because that's a whole different level, Rodolfo.
Yeah, and that was that's very interesting because in this personal exploration, I also I found out that I am very sensitive to energy, and I didn't know that till about 10 years ago. And I recognized that I was able to feel what people around me were feeling, because I had a friend who was telling her story of how she went through chemotherapy because of a cancer. And I started getting all the sensations in my body. And I'm like, oh, this is not me. And this is exactly what she's describing. And I was actually physically experiencing what she was talking about. So I started exploring energy work. And I started different methods. And I ended up taking an energy seminar or practice in Panama, and I met this guy who asked me, what is it that you do? And at that moment, I was a family business consultant, and I told him this, and he's like, well, what are you doing here? And I told him, well, this is my secret life, right? This is what I do at night and during the weekends. And I asked him, what is it that you're doing? And what is it that you do for your life? And he's like, well, I have the same situation. I have a corporate career, but this is what I do during the weekends, right? And he said, well, haven't you ever thought about bringing some kind of this knowledge into businesses and corporations? And I had thought about it very briefly, but I never considered it like for real. So he says, "Oh, I want to do something with my team. Let's do something. You design something, share it with me, and we'll work with them." And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And he takes out his card and puts it on the table. He's the VP for Latin America for a multinational company. And his team was a leadership team for Latin America for that company. I'm like, whoa, I got my first client and I didn't even have a product. So I came back to Costa Rica and started designing the workshop in my office and the board in my office. And people started coming in. My clients started coming in and friends, and they saw the what was on the board, and there was the ego and a lot of information there, being conscious and aware and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what is that? And I started explaining to them. It's like, oh, I want to take that. When are you giving it? I'm like, no, I'm doing it in Panama. And they're like, oh, no, you got to do it here. So people started asking for it. And that's how I started moving over. And 5 years ago, I decided I was going to close my family business consulting practice and dedicate myself to bringing awareness and consciousness into businesses. Because I'm a business major, I have a business degree and a master's degree in business and entrepreneurship and family business and entrepreneurship. And that's a world that I know. And since I know this world, I know there's a great need of awareness and consciousness and leading from another space, not from ego, but from purpose, and not pushing people, but actually developing ourselves and drawing people in to our best, from our best selves. And that's a world that I love that world. I love the business world. And I know we can do things much better in the business world. So that's the way I brought it in. I still do other stuff. Like on the side, I still do my energy work. And this weekend I was opening a new Earth and Legacy leadership retreat with a ceremony, like a shamanic ceremony. And I love that area. But I think that I find myself to be, or I define myself as a bridge between all this spiritual world and the business world, because I can speak the business language. And I know, I don't want to say I know, but I've found ways of bringing those concepts into the business world and not having that much resistance. I mean, and having people recognize that this is not only good for themselves, but also good for business. And the more I grow, the more my business can grow, and my teams can grow, and my results can grow. And we can do good in that process to everyone.
What would you say is the number one concern or blind spot, maybe call it blind spot, that the business world has today, and that makes you so well fitted for what you're doing today?
I don't know if there's a number one. I'm gonna start speaking, and then and then we'll see how many there are. But I think one is, and I've come to learn. I've been a very competitive person in my life, and I've come to understand that competition in systems is actually, especially in the business world, it's actually bad for all of us. Because and when I say that, I mean by when I have my business, when I lead my business based on profit, and all I want is to maximize profit, the only way to maximize profit is actually to deplete the system. I gotta pay the least that I can to my providers. I gotta charge the most that I can to my clients. I gotta pay my employees the least possible amount. I gotta pay the least amount of taxes that I can. So when I pay the least and I charge the most, that's the way that I maximize profit. And that's the only way. Like, you can't maximize profit in another way. So you deplete your providers. You're not paying your employees the right or the correct amount or the honorable amount. And you're charging clients the most that you can. So and And so my providers cannot invest in research and development. They have to start seeing how they reduce their own costs so they can match the price that I'm asking for. And that becomes a chain of depletion, right? And we start destroying the system. Instead, if we can focus on purpose and what is the impact of that we want the company to have in the system, a positive impact in the system, that I can pay what's right. I'm not saying that we need to pay more than what's right. So pay the right amount. So my provider can invest in research and development, can invest in the best employees that they need, and the best products that they need so they can provide the best service for me. So I can charge the client what is actually the right amount so they will have more money to invest in other parts of the economy, or even come back and buy more from me because I charge the right amount. So, and same thing with my employees and with the government. So when we compete and we base our businesses in profitability, we actually leech of the system. We're draining the system. Versus if we're creating value, then we become symbiotic with the system. We're creating value for the system, so the system can actually grow and flourish. And I think that's something that we're starting to understand in the business world, but there's still a lot of people that are afraid to go that way. And I said, I'm not sure that there's one like big blind spot, but I think that's one. And then the other one is the recognition that systems, and this is actually what I love the most about the work that I'm doing, is like we need to be able to recognize that the systems that we create are composed by individuals. And every system we create is composed by individuals. So if we want the system to be conscious, if we want the system to flourish, the individuals need to be conscious, and the individuals need to flourish. So we need to work on an individual basis. Like we can have the best processes, we can have the best materials and products to work at the best technology, but if our people are not at their best selves, all of this is going to waste. We're not fully using all of our resources because people are not there. So we need to invest in the ability that people may have to recognize what's limiting them and how can they bring their best selves to what they're doing, to whatever they're doing. And I think that is, we've taken and I'm not from human resources. I would call myself more a strategist and a visionary than human resources. Although right now I work on developing people, but that's not, my career hasn't been in that area. But I think that we have taken human resources area in businesses and said it like this is something that needs to happen, but it's not strategic. And for me right now, and after having a whole career in business, it's like, oh, human resources should have always been at the center of the business, because if we don't have the right mindset and the right abilities to deal with ourselves, then there's no way we're taking full advantage of other resources like technology and information and all of that. So I do think that that's still a blind spot, that investing in people is probably the best investment that we can do.
So does that mean that then the workshops, the training that you provide organizations is very, very based on the individual itself?
Yes, absolutely. I actually divide the work that I do in 3 areas. One of the areas is training. And in the training part, what we want to do is what I call conscious leadership, is we want to take the individual inside of themselves and be able to recognize and develop their mindset, their abilities, their emotional intelligence, so they can bring their best selves and impact others in the most powerful way. So that's the conscious leadership, is how do I deal with myself first, because the better that I understand myself, it becomes much easier to understand the other. It's like when we learn how to listen to our own story and recognize our limiting beliefs and recognize when we're stuck in an emotion, then the moment we're good at that, it becomes very easy to recognize it in the other person. When they speak and in their language, we hear that they're stuck. They have a limiting belief, and it really doesn't matter how hard I push them. They already decided in their subconscious mind that they're not going to be able to do it. So we're able to recognize that in the other, and we can help them change that. But we first need to be able to do that in ourselves. So that's the training part, and the training part is based on the person. Then there's the consulting part, and the consulting part is basically how do we develop a system that can allow that to happen, and it's basically redefining the way we see businesses. It's not so much what we do, but the way we see them. We see the system, and like I said before, the system's composed by individuals. So the sum of the habits that people have are going to be our structures and processes. So if you want to change structures and processes in our business, people need to be able to change their habits. And if they're aware of themselves and aware of their habits, they can just choose to change. The sum of the emotions of people is what we call climate and environment in our companies. So if people are able to deal with their emotions, we can create or facilitate a better climate and environment. The sum of the belief systems is what we call culture. So if we want to change the culture, people need to change what they believe about the system. The sum of the intellect, or the thinking processes, and the decision-making processes and the gaps, is what we call innovation and learning in the system. If we want people to do things differently, if we want to create gaps and let's say we're going to take that big step and go from a paper-based business to a technology-based business, then people need to create those gaps in their minds and move that way, right? And that's going to be accompanied by the belief system, by the story that they tell themselves. Our ability as individuals to see our past, project into the future, and act now is our ability to have strategic thinking. See our past, what we've done, project ourselves into the future as a company, but act today. And so everything matches up. The ego is the way we see ourselves compared to others, and that's the value proposal in the business. We as a business, we share that we offer you this, this, and this that the competition doesn't offer, that other businesses don't offer. But we need to be able to see ourselves in that way. We can't say that we are the best customer service company in the planet when people themselves don't feel that they are the best customer service providers. So they need to be able to develop that within themselves. And then the company purpose, people should be able to identify with the company purpose. And in order for the company to be responsible, people need to be individually responsible. In order for the company to learn, people need to learn. In order for the company to interact positively with their system and recognize their interdependence, people need to be able to do it. In order for the company to create value, people need to create value. And that's the consulting part. That's like, we can plan all this, but then we need to teach people how to see themselves into that system and have the tools to be able to redress themselves into that line that we're thinking.
Excellent. So would you mind reminding everybody at Mindalia TV, where can we find you online? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, Facebook is a very good way to find me. And that would be, my company name is Ser Consultores, SER Consultores. You can find me by facebook.com/consultores, which is consultants in Spanish, .ser, SER. That would be a way. And the other one's through email, and the email is easier. That's leader, LEADER, at ser, SER, leader, same word.com. You can find me there.
And leader is in Spanish or in English?
In English.
In English. Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Wonderful. So let me go to a few questions that we have here for you. The first one is, as a business leader, how can we approach, or as business leaders, how can we approach our employees with consciousness if this lifestyle is not compatible with their beliefs?
Yeah, and I think that, no, more than thinking, I know that the more we work on ourselves, the easier it is to project that into others. When people see us being happy, being emotionally stable, and that doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. That means that, yeah, we have emotions, but then we're able to come back to center and make decisions from that centered place, when we're able to recognize our belief systems and our needs of controlling, or our lack of involvement or commitment, and we're able to recognize all that in ourselves, and the more authentic we become, then people start seeing that. They're like, oh, I want that, right? And it's been the work that I've been doing is, it's been an amazing process, because when I get to work with leaders, then what usually tends to happen is that people that respond to them end up asking, what is it that you guys are doing in there when you're training? Because we're seeing you being transformed, and we want that. And it just becomes beautiful. And I just had a couple examples in the last few months. It's like we're doing this training with the leaders of the company, and then the people under them and that support them are actively asking, we want to know what is it that you're doing, because we're seeing you change and we like it. We like what's going on, right? And so I think that's the best way. It's like the more you work on yourselves, the more you start integrating others, and people will look up. And that's true leadership. That's what I call conscious leadership. It's like you're working on yourself and you're bringing your best self, and people want that. People are going to want that when they see you happy, when they see you centered, when they see you being impactful, listening to them in a different way, interacting with them in a different way. So that would be the simplest way.
Excellent. Next question. You talk about how there are different personality traits in different cultures. How could you recommend to integrate them and create an environment where each aspect is respected and embraced?
Yeah, and I would reframe that in the ego circle, or the ego aspect. It's like when we recognize, we need to recognize that we're different, and differences are not bad. They're just differences. And when we recognize the differences and the impact of those differences in ourselves, it's like the other person is very direct. And me as a Costa Rican, it's like I get shocked by someone telling me, I hate what you're doing. I'm like, whoa. And that moves me. That creates an emotion. That creates a thought process. Oh, maybe I'm not good enough. And that creates an emotion. It's like, and first I feel sad, and then I feel angry, and I want to defend myself. And it's like, oh, wait. Whew. This person's being very direct, because that's the culture. They're not seeking to be aggressive or hurting me. They're just telling what they feel. And then second is like, they have a right to their own opinion. Now I can use that to defend myself, or I can ask them, well, what is it that you didn't like, and how could this be better? And now I can connect to that person. But first we need to deal with what comes up within ourselves, with my mind telling me I'm not good enough, I failed, and then my emotions trying to protect me and says, okay, well, now we got to defend ourselves, and now we got to attack them. And they're like, you don't know, obviously you didn't understand, obviously you're stupid, right? And so now I'm defending myself. It's like, well, wait. First I deal with my mind, deal with my ego, I deal with my emotions, and now I can seek to connect. And that will be the ideal. It's like the differences and the way not everyone's going to think the way we think. That's good. It's actually good. So how do I recognize my resistance to that, and then start using it to grow? I'm not sure if I answered the
yeah, you did, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely, you did. Next question. Can we apply consciousness to all areas of our lives? To all areas of our lives?
Yes, and actually, one of the most beautiful things right now I'm doing, I call it conscious leadership and conscious organizations. But basically, the system applies to families, to communities, to countries, to the whole world, right? And once again, if we are able to, or when we're able to bring people in and recognize what's going on in themselves, we can have different conversations and different interactions. And I've actually worked this model with family businesses because I've been integrating a little bit of them, these two worlds. And when in families, they start recognizing their own beliefs, their own stories, their own emotions, then when they face each other, they're not like, you're making me feel. It's like, okay, I'm feeling this. And my experience as a child with you was this. And my belief systems that I've never had, or I've had this, or I haven't had this. And then the other person can empathize with that. It's like, okay, my story is different. Now, how do we build a different story? How do we create some ground where we can actually meet and work together and not collide, right? And that applies for families, that applies for communities, that applies for every system. Like consciousness is self-awareness and consciousness will help us interact in a much better way in every single situation that we have.
Excellent. Next question. When we feel the energy of the environment, can we differentiate between actual energy surrounding and our own imagination?
I would turn that around, and in a sense, it's like take responsibility. So does it matter if it's real or if it's imagined? It really doesn't matter. What matters how we feel about what's going on. And now, if I'm not feeling good, how do I change that in myself? How do I address my own energy, my own well-being, my own emotions, my own feelings, and take charge of that, take responsibility for it, and change it. And now I start impacting myself. Like I can be in a room where everyone's fighting, and I can engage and feel bad and address that, or I can be that pillar of peace and calmness and start actually by being that pillar, then other people can start drawing from that energy. It's like, okay, why are you so at peace? Like, well, I'm not gonna engage. And then now they have a light where they can hang on, or now they have a pillar where they can lean. It's like, okay, I want that. I'm gonna stop doing that instead of becoming a victim of what's going on around us. So yeah, I would take the principle of responsibility and apply it there and say, well, what is it that you want to create?
Beautiful. And the last question, why is it so hard for many to connect to their emotions?
Well, I'm going to divide that answer into when the person says many, I would start by separating male and males us as males have been trained to disconnect from emotions, or not to disconnect, but to address all emotions through anger, because that's the only emotion that we're allowed to express. Right? If we are sad, if we are depressed, if we are either very happy, it's like that's not a male emotion, right? The only true male emotion is anger. So we've been trained since we were kids, like don't cry, don't be a man, and all that, right? So males, we have to do a lot of work in allowing ourselves to express, to recognize and express emotions. And we need to do our work, but then others around us also need to do the work, because if I express emotions and you, as my friend or as my buddy or as my brother, turn to me and say, why are you crying? Be a man. It's like, oh, you're a wimp. And then I'm immediately going to go back to my old self. If my partner looks at me and sees me crying and says, what's wrong with you? What do you mean, what's wrong with me? It's like if my partner doesn't allow me to have emotions and judges me for having emotions, then I'm going back to being that macho man and not expressing that. So there's the male part, and then there's the society part, in which society has taught us that, especially in business, emotions are not well received. right? So if a woman cries in business, then she's weak because she's expressing emotions. If we are anxious, then we're weak because we're not able to handle our emotions. So that's especially in business. Emotions are not well received. And there was a time a few years ago and several decades ago when we actually in business, we said any problems that you have at home, you need to leave them at home. That means don't bring your emotions into business, right? And that then psychology jumped and it was like, hey, that is a psychotic that's a psychotic behavior. It's like you can't do that. If you're going through emotions, you're gonna carry those emotions wherever you go. You can't just separate from them, right? That would be having a psychotic breakdown. So we're learning how to integrate those emotions or who we are into and what we're experiencing into everything that we do. I think we're still learning, and it's fine as long as we're learning, right? And we're transforming and we're recognizing and having these conversations.
Excellent. We've reached the end of our conversation today, Rodolfo. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Ooh, I have a lot of information more than I would love to add, but but no, I'm just the only thing to close is thank you for the space. Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Mirna, and thank you for everyone who's listening. But also, and I love this John Mackey from Whole Foods has a beautiful quote that I can't remember his exact words right now, but he says, "My business grew exponentially the moment I recognized that I was in the way." Right, and so it is very important for us to work on ourselves, recognize what's going on in ourselves, and bring that awareness inside, so we can actually bring our best selves to a space, and so our businesses can grow, our societies can grow, our families can be happier together. But it's an individual work first. So if we can do that, then we can change the world in nothing, in a few days.
Excellent. Well, so thank you very much, Rodolfo, for being here with us today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and thank you for sharing so much. Again, this is Angel Riva with Mindalia TV. Thank you very much for being with us today, and hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.